Welcome, Vols and Lady Vols, to Power T Talk. From the Cathedral of Neyland Stadium to the fanatical landscape of college sports, we're breaking down the plays, the players, and the pride of the Southland. I'm Daniel, your host, here with my comrade and co-host, Zack. Grab your orange and white. Let's run through the tea. It's time to give our all for Tennessee. This is Power T Talk. Kind of a back and forth start to the season, Zach, and I don't mean that in the sense that we've looked bad, we've looked good, we've looked bad, we've looked good. I mean, we had the Syracuse game where we didn't know what to expect. It's the opener. We had the ETSU game where we knew what to expect. We had the Georgia game that was as big as they get. And then we had the UAB game where we knew what to expect, but we didn't learn much. And so now suddenly before us, we have a road SEC tilt.
Yeah, not to go all Colin Cowherd with trying to incorporate regular life into football, but it's like that stupid highway you go on where it's 55 and then it's 45 and then you get to stoplight, it's 35, then it's 45, 55, 45, all within like 20, 25 miles. That's what it feels like. It's like 12:45 UAB 38.5-point favorite start after the Georgia game. It's like it's hard to get excited for it. You know, it's like, do I even want to open my beer for this? Do I pull out the Tennessee whiskey? It's one of those weird ones. But now we're going to get into the meat of it. Road game. It's weird that it's the first one. It's game number 5 in the road game. Of course, we're probably not going to have to worry about this anymore after the SEC announced the new schedules, which we'll get to later. But it is kind of odd that your first road game is Mississippi State as well. Just kind of one of those odd ones you only played twice every 6-7 years. And now it's like, damn, we're going to be, after this is game number 5. We're almost halfway through the regular season.
It's a sneaky little game, and we're going to get to it pretty quickly. I think it's worth reviewing the UAB game, but speeding through it. The thing I'll say about Mississippi State is a little bit of foreshadowing. It's one of those Saturdays where like you have these massive primetime games, and we're going to talk about a couple of them, but then just sitting there right before them at a weird time slot is this road tilt. And it's just one of those where like if you've watched college football long enough, it makes you feel a little queasy. And so I want to spend a lot of time previewing that game and getting to know Mississippi State. I want to review UAB. Unfortunately, it turned into one of those games that I don't feel like we could learn a whole lot. And so we're gonna go through it pretty quickly and just note a player who popped as we go. We'll start with the offense. It was the way I described it was a day at the office. I gave them a 93. They ran the ball way better than you expected. They could have thrown for as much as they could have, named their yardage on throwing the ball if they had really wanted to. There was a moment after the personal foul that was a pretty nasty cheap shot and the stomp that I really thought Heupel, I thought there was a chance he might be like, oh, okay, and score like 75. But we also didn't need to do that. And so it turned into like business as usual in ways that like the numbers look totally fine, but not crazy noteworthy. And so I land at here's what we could learn, low A.
If it was an SEC opponent, I think we would have saw that. I think there would have been a message sender kind of score. But I think after the stomp, it was, let's just get out of here. And then, you're in a tough spot in those FBS, group of 5 where you're not very good, right? Boy, there was some try hard in the fourth quarter by Trent Dilfer, calling some deep overs and some steep fly routes and all that. So I think Heupel wanted to get out of there. To kind of start with my offensive rating, I went with a 94. Stop turning the ball over so I can give you an A+.
Yes.
I thought the offense was smooth. It did look like they were running through the motions, but in a good way, if that makes sense. Like, we know the hits. We know this will work. Let's go out and just score points and get our yardage in, get our stats in. Let's go home. That pick that Aguilar threw should have been defensive pass interference. The refs were awful Saturday. They were like us Vol fans, just hung over after the Georgia game. It felt like it was a bad missed call. Really felt after the stomping incident that Tennessee was just trying to get out of there. And I would say that once they got one more drive in that third quarter, Heupel was good. Let's go home. I don't love that they couldn't score with Merklinger, and I'm not blaming him completely, but it is a concern and something to keep an eye on.
Speaks to depth just a little bit.
Yes, the operation was not smooth. And I know it's ETSU. Merklinger was moving the ball pretty efficiently, and the offensive line handled their business. And I know UAB is technically a step up there, but it did not feel smooth at all. I don't know if they had a bad week of practice, what that could have been. I thought it was important. Peyton Lewis had a really good day. He needed that. Star Thomas getting 10 touches felt like a practical joke, but hey, if we're going to save him, not a game to use him. So O-line was really good. The starters, I thought the backups were not great. Was not very good. They just did not look engaged. I'll put it that way. The second unit. The scheme was excellent. Morris also had a massive TD that was wiped out by a very, very ticky-tack holding penalty. I think it was whatever the Georgia guy's name is. I should remember, but I'm not going to. Steichbaum or whatever. Even thought he said that was not a good Steincombe. Is that Matt Steincombe? Whatever.
Stinchcombe, maybe?
Yeah, Stinchcombe, maybe. He thought that was a bad call, too. We handled business. I learned two things. One, Peyton Lewis, let's not give up on him. Two, if Joey has to miss a game, it could be ugly, which I think we already knew anyway, but that kind of confirmed it.
Yeah, it was a little too like Thanksgiving afternoon after the Turkey football game with Merck in there. And that's fun vibes unless you need it to not be that. And so, there's a famous quote from a Indianapolis Colts offensive coordinator about that we won't say on air. The one thing I'll say about the game in general, and this was like coming from some of the fans and just what it looked like in Neyland, it looked like a horribly hot day. That's not an excuse, but it looked like one of those days where it was like 88 and 88% humidity, and we're up by 54, and they're ready to get out of there. And so, again, it's one of those tweener games, and all you can do is go take care of business, and they did. The defense, to me, again, I felt like I've been here a couple times, and maybe even unfairly, but uninspiring but not negative. There's a couple reasons for that. I gave it an 82. I absolutely loved to see Boo flash. And, we can all have our thoughts on the drop punt, but he flashed and flashed and flashed. What he is supposed to do at his talent level in a game like this is be completely different than everybody on the field. And there were so many moments throughout the rest of the game after the drop punt that he looked like he was on a completely different level than anybody on the field. That's all you can ask, especially in a game like this. And if we have concerns about his buy-in or whatever, all you can ask for is for him to show out in these moments. And that's what he's done. I would really like to see us get home more in terms of pressure. That can be the front four. That can be blitz looks. But some kind of getting home to take the defense to the next level is just going to help us stay alive on some of these drives. And any little success rate concerns we have from another team's run game, which is going to become really relevant on Saturday, any flash play just erases some of that and evens some of that out. And so that's the one thing I want to see. But again, weird day at the office. Where'd you sit with the defense from what we can learn?
What was your overall rating?
It was 82.
82. I went with an 80. The overall box score numbers and some of the advanced numbers suggest we should go lower. I will defend them for these reasons. Because UAB did have a 77 percentile success rate, which is not good. But I will defend it. Boo gifted them 3 points when the starters ran with the muff punt. That's the first thing. Tennessee was playing third stringers for the entire fourth quarter to get guys reps. Dilfer not only had the starters in, he was clearly trying to score points, clearly trying to get an extra 14 for the resume when he's called into the office to get fired. They got Tennessee did get a scoop and scored TD, so I gave them a bonus for that. That was good to see. Also, interesting number. Nobody on defense played over 43 snaps. So UAB ran 89 plays. So technically nobody had played 50% of the snaps. So that gives you an idea of where Tennessee was with just getting bodies on the field. Nobody on the defensive line played more than 29 snaps. Tennessee had 27 players play at least 14 snaps. So they were trying. I mean, you're talking going into your 3 deep there. And PFF doesn't grade less than 14, so there's probably more guys on there. And I looked at the participation report on utsports.com. That's what it showed. The participation report looked like they were pulling students to play defense. Like, that's how long it was. It looked more like a class list, a big 100-person class list at Tennessee than an actual defensive participation report. They were very simple schematically. It was nothing crazy. I think Banks ran maybe 2 or 3 blitzes, and I think it was the same exact blitz. It's annoying. UAB does have a good offense, and we did talk about that last week. They were going to score points, and I'd rather they did that in the fourth quarter and when the third stringers win than they did the first 3 quarters. So they got out of there without any significant injuries. They got Eason and Bailey snaps, but also gave them some R&R in the second half, which I think they needed. Jackson Moy should be back. That's going to help. We can get to that in the preview. So I gave him an 80. It feels like you mentioned, last year against weaker opponents, Tennessee could get to the quarterback whenever they wanted. And it feels like they don't have that fire. Not saying they're not playing with passion. They just don't have that electricity in the pass rush that they've had before. Whether that's just because Pierce was that good, whether that's the lack of Hobbs and Moy not being able to get the middle taken care of. I don't know, but I gave it an 80. It was fine. I'm not offended by it. If Mississippi State comes out and puts up 34, then I will. Then we'll start adjusting.
I think, the one little thing that we both were on is that whether it's because they're a decent offense or because they were going to be a decent offense against second and third stringers, they were going to score 15 to 25. I think they just were. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say, we don't care if other teams scored. No, it's just that's what was going to happen. And so I'm not fretting necessarily about them getting to 24. And if you look at Kitna's just raw statistics, that dude can sling it, man. He can move the ball around the yard, and that is props to him, and they're going to score on some teams as they go, even if they struggle mightily in some other moments. But again, it was one of those that I didn't even know some of that about the participation report. It's just one of those games where you had a couple people pop, you had a ton of people contribute. Game was in hand early on. Just one of those that I don't feel like you can learn a ton from. And so we're kind of erring on the side of them, kind of middle point grade. I think because we're not grading the true defense there. We're grading a little bit of wincing at some of the numbers, but knowing what the game was like.
I mean, you're talking Jaden Perlow got 14 plays. Trey Poteet got 22. Tim Merritt got 17. Jaden Hardman got 23. Marion Dye, who was actually out there first drive or second drive, got 29 plays. Carson Gentle got 23 plays. I don't think Carson's getting 23 snaps the rest of the season. Sidney Walton got 43 plays. Just those guys aren't going to get those snaps in games that matter. Then none of them are going to be playing against Mississippi State. So you got to consider that. And I believe all of those guys other than Gentle are true freshmen. So it's annoying, right? It's just annoying. And you're looking at the numbers. You're like, man, Tennessee continues to rank down to the bottom. But also Tim Banks deserves the benefit of the doubt after what he's kind of put on the last couple of years. So I'm not overall panicking. Like I said, after this week, we're going to learn more. I think we're going to learn a lot by the defense. And we'll get to Mississippi State, how good they are offensively. But overall, I'm not going to take anything serious from this game.
I think it's time to get to Mississippi State. I mean, this is one of those, like we said, suddenly you bounce back and forth between big games and less significant games, and you take care of business as best you can. and suddenly a team we don't know a ton about overall is going to go on the road to a hostile environment in the SEC. I think the biggest thing we have to do first, and this is, to put some guys on the radar, is let's get to know the roster a little bit. We could talk about what they're going to try to do. We can talk about the ways they're going to stress us. We'll get into score predictions and everything. But what does Mississippi State bring to the table from a roster perspective, and what are the highlights there?
Yeah, so they got Blake Shapen at quarterback. He was a transfer from Oklahoma. He got hurt very early in the year last year and killed their season. They were expecting to rely on him. They had to play Van Buren a lot. That was not something they were expecting. Tough, good enough arm. He's not afraid to throw it. Decent athlete. I will say he's gettable in the backfield. He's not going to run around guys. He's not Lamar Jackson. So, not that anyone is, but I think that you're going to be able to corral him if you can pressure from, collapse in on him. Their running backs are dudes. And I think that you're going to see some tough running, some absolute really tough running. They got a guy named Fluff Bothwell.
Amazing name.
Great name. Perfect. He's not an English aristocrat. He's a running back that plays for Mississippi State. So Fluff Bothwell, he's the hammer of their offense, a transfer from South Alabama. I said he reminded me of Anthony Dixon. You pushed back on me, and I was thinking of Vic Ballard. That's actually who I was thinking of, because Dixon was like 245.
Yeah, Dixon was he was like, a truck, basically.
Yes.
But Vic Ballard was like the little bowling ball, the feet are quick, and he's going to squeeze through that hole. Bothwell's good, man. He's used to finding the end zone. He was on not that this is destiny, but he was on a South Alabama team that scored like crazy and then was in the portal and was one of those names in the portal that it was like, if you know ball, this is more than just a funny name.
Yep.
Like there were some things to be excited about, and he landed in a spot that's going to let him produce. They have a super experienced quarterback. Like, he got experience before he transferred. And then they have Bothwell and then Devon Booth that are perfectly capable backs. They are not going to be first round draft picks, but in an offense that can run the football, they're going to be heard from, I think.
Booth went for 21-25 against us last year against a pretty elite run defense. And he's kind of more their third down back, a little more wiggle than Bothwell. They're going to rely on both of them. Both of them are going to rotate. I think Bothwell has 47 carries and Booth has 34, so pretty close to a 1A, 1B situation. They're going to be able to put up some numbers, I think, against Tennessee. Now, it might not be pretty. It might not be 5.5 yards a pop for them, but they're going to have over 100 yards rushing between those two.
They absolutely are. I'm going to pop real quick and see what they had last year against us, because I know he did really well against us, but overall, what did they ran the ball last year?
And Lebby is a Heupel disciple. Did not mean that for that to rhyme. So we'll get more into their scheme, but they run a ton of 11 personnel, but they're like a heavy 11.
They ran for 180 last year in Neyland, and that includes some sacks that brought it down. They had two different backs, Booth and then Johnny Daniels, who both averaged 6.3 a pop last year. And they were getting after us a little bit. Now, Van Buren and passing the ball looked really ugly, and that our defense was still really good. But Booth and Bothwell is an upgrade, and Bothwell himself is a big upgrade, I think.
They have 37 rushes per game. That's 41st in the country now. And Shapen's not like the mobile quarterback. He's not taking 12 of those carries from them. So they're going to run the ball a lot. And they got two wideouts, which I'm going to let you kind of go with on the wideouts. They've got two guys that can play, two transfers.
Two guys that can play, and two guys that, not that they're all-American caliber, but they're guys that seem like they're going to stress us a little bit. Receivers that, seems like we've had a little bit of trouble with this type of receiver so far this season.
Yeah, they've got two guys, Anthony Evans, Brennan Thompson. Evans is a Georgia transfer, just came in. He's their slot guy. He's about 5'11", 190. He's got 21 catches on 22 targets. So him and Shapen have great chemistry. They're going to use Evans in a variety of ways. They're going to mix him around. You're going to see Boo on him. Boo's going to have to man up on some of those. And then they got Brandon Thompson. And I would say compare him to 2023 Squirrel White, pre-shoulder injury Squirrel White. He started at Texas, was at Oklahoma. Lebby brought him in. He's a speed guy, takes the top off the defense. He's only about 5'9", like 170, 180. He's gonna go on fly routes. They're gonna try and do him. And he's got a nice little stutter step at the top of his route, I noticed on a couple of a few highlights I watched. So those two guys can do some damage. Now, I would imagine Hood will probably be on Thompson. Then the slot guys, McMurray and Carter, will stay on Evans. And then they don't throw to anyone else besides Evan and Thompson. In 4 games, no one else has more than 6 catches other than those two guys. Evans has 21. I think Thompson has like 20, if I'm not mistaken. So you're going to have 16 catches. So Thompson's got 16. So they're not going to throw to anyone else. They're going to really focus on those guys. You know, Evans and Thompson have 22 targets apiece. That's 44. They've thrown about 105 passes. So that's pretty close to 50%. So I think you're going to put Redmond on the outside guy. They rotate that position, and then Hood is going to stay with Thompson so they don't get beat deep. And then, like I said, you're going to have to. Evans might see some bracket coverage too, like he's that good.
And Thompson is the type of guy that he's trying to get on top of the defense. He is a really technical guy, but he's small, and so Hood has graded out really well. He's been super physical. He seems very confident. He's playing with a lot of confidence right now. And so Hood on a guy like Thompson, obviously that guy, you know, he's technical and he's fast, but Hood might be a good matchup for a guy like that who wants to get off of press coverage and wants to get out in the open. And Hood is just like, he's handsy enough to where he's like, you're going to earn it if that happens. You're going to earn it for sure. And then Evans to me strikes me as like a little bit of a version of Jonte Cook, a little bit of a version of Zachariah Branch, where it's like you're running crossers against our slot defenders, and Boo can't be a half step slow. And that's why I was so excited to see his contribution last week of like, if he's fully engaged and he's kind of ahead of the game, that's a huge win for our defense because they're going to have to be against the way they like to attack with these receivers.
And Lebby's going to run screens for these guys. They run out of all their passes, about 10 to 15% of them are screens. So Tennessee's going to have to watch for the screen game with Evans, with Thompson. They're going to have to rally. They're going to have to tackle. And I would say too, Tennessee normally does not run press coverage until this year. It's like the first time we've truly seen it. If you're going to do that against these two guys, you better tighten up hard because they're going to beat you and they got some yak potential in them. So you better buckle up your chin strap.
What are you seeing? We'll get to the defense in a second, but in the trenches on offense, what are you seeing from their offensive line? We're looking for a little more pop from our D-line, a little more stress from our D-line. How do you feel like their offensive line is going to hold up against we still have talent up there against our defensive line?
Big, burly dudes is what I put in all caps here. Everyone's over 315. They love huge offensive linemen and then working with them. It reminds me of our line last year. Not saying that they're that good or that bad, just how the line works with really tall tackles, really heavy personnel, not afraid to take a guy that might have some bad weight and work on him. They are vulnerable on the edge there. Their guards are disciplined, but the edge guys, they've got a little work on. They have a really good center, Cannon Boone. He might be all SEC this year. He's really earned some high PFF grades. Albert Reese forced their best offensive lineman. They started him at left tackle, and then they had injury to Blake Steen at right tackle. They moved Reese back to right tackle. So they got a backup left tackle there right now. So it's Javen James, He's a redshirt sophomore, another big dude. I think he's 6'7", 340 is what I saw. And then they've got two really good guards. They got Zach Owens, who was at Clemson, Colorado. He's finally found a home. Jacoby Jackson is going to, I think, be an NFL guy based off what I've seen. So big group. They're going to push us around a little bit. There's going to be some runs. 3rd and 2, you're going to get frustrated if you're a Vol fan. The thing is, we're going to have the athleticism edge. And so I think if you can attack their edge tackles, even though Reese is very good, I think left tackle is a very vulnerable spot where Tennessee could do some damage against their offensive line in both the run and the pass defense.
The thing I see and you and I have watched a little bit of tape from Mississippi State. We're thinking about how they want to attack us. We've watched some highlights from their big moments. The thing that I think about from what I've seen, but also thinking about this game in Starkville and a big group that has good backs behind them, this is a group playing with confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that means they're going to have the edge the whole game, we'll see. But this is a group playing with confidence, and sometimes when you're an O-line playing with confidence and you get a little bit going downhill, I think you're right. I think we're going to see a 3rd and 4 that they pick up relatively easily and then go quick, or we're going to see 1 or 2 gashes and that second level is really going to be holding on to their butts for a second. And it's different from Georgia. Georgia is like pure physicality, even from the backs, but it's not a bad run game. And their offense overall has been really successful. And that's what makes me feel like they're a group that is playing with a lot of confidence right now. It's a dangerous little thing.
They have 3 fifth-year seniors. Reese, Boone, and Jackson are 3 fifth-year seniors. James and Owens are 3rd-year guys. I think James has been there since the beginning. So they've seen a lot of this offensive line's seen a lot. This is not a young group. This is not, and we know that experience isn't always great, right? We're a better offensive line this year with a less experienced group than we were last year. But overall, I would not discount just because it's Mississippi State that they're not going to be able to push around Tennessee a little bit. When I reviewed their offensive line and I read some stuff and I looked up some stuff and remember watching their game against Arizona State, this group stood out to me as like this is not last year's Mississippi State. This is a much improved group, as you mentioned, with the confidence, and the PFF grades show that out as well. They've earned eye marks in each game this year.
Thinking about a lot of times with Heupel, and we want to see it on the road, but some of the time you can have a little bit of confidence in like, okay, like the defense is going to have their bend but don't break moments. But if the offense is humming, it just changes things. Like it just changes the perception of the game a little bit. And so you're not just constantly worried about a 3rd and 2 because that offense needs to keep up with you a little bit. And so when you look at their defense, and it's specifically, we'll start in the trenches, how do you see the guys playing out in their positions, but then do you feel like it's attackable for Joey and our offense?
Yeah, would be my concern as a Mississippi State fan. They are not at full strength. Will Whitson was a Coastal Carolina transfer. In 2 games, he had 2 sacks and 3.5 tackles for loss. He started out really hot for them, and he was wrecking Arizona State. He got hurt. He's out for the year. Their other experienced defensive lineman, Ray Thomas, he's missed the last 2 games. I had not checked the injury report, but he could miss this game as well. They're still an okay unit. Their nose tackle, Jeray Bledsoe, their 3-tech defensive tackle, Kedrick Bingley Jones. They're big dudes. They're run stuffers. You're not going to see them rushing to passer. Their job is to maintain their gaps. They play a 3-3-5. We will get to it. I know Vol fans are quaking in their boots, but we will get to your
boots.
Oh, I know. Oh, no. But their job is to hold their gaps and let the linebackers clean up. They're going to play around 8 guys. DJ Reed is going to be their like interior inside guy that you're going to see on passing downs. They've got good size up front. They use their 2 offensive linebackers to bring pressure, which they've not been successful with that. I think Mississippi State has, if I'm not mistaken, a total of 6 sacks in 4 games, and Whitson and Thomas were accounted for at least 3 of those. I think it might have been 4. So this unit does not scare me. I think Tennessee's going to be able to run the ball against Mississippi State.
They also, I mean, the Arizona State game is their big flashpoint in the season, and it was at home, and they got a lot of momentum going, and they hit on some big plays, and that crazy ending. But just thinking about the flow of that game, Arizona State had two different rushers go over 100 yards. They had a guy go 18 for 110, another guy go 23 for 105. So right around 4.5, all the way up to 6 yards per carry. They gave up 251 yards rushing that game. So they're vulnerable in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a team that relies on getting those receivers out in space and hitting a big play so that you're not just running downhill at them all game.
Right.
And so things like those little road concerns that we have, and we'll talk about it more, those little procedural things that get you off schedule, or it doesn't seem quite right in the rhythm. We haven't seen that yet this year from Tennessee. We haven't seen them have to respond to that, and especially on the road. It's going to be on them to answer a lot of those questions. But if they answer those questions, they can have success running the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Whitson being out is such a huge blow for them. Like he was wrecking Sam Leavitt in that game. The thing that killed them was Arizona State once they got inside the 20, just couldn't do anything in the red zone. And Leavitt, who's a good quarterback, just got intimidated, which sounds crazy because it's Mississippi State, but he's still young. But overall, they're going to try and just maintain their gaps and fight for their lives, which sounds like an insult, but I'm trying not to make it an insult because they have an excellent linebacker in Isaac Smith, and they're going to let him do his thing. They're going to let their linebackers clean up everything, try and make plays. That's their end game. But if you're pushing their defensive line off their gaps, if your double teams are successful and you're getting to the second level, then you're going to dominate the run game. And that's what Tennessee, I think you're going to see a lot of duo, a lot of pin and pull in this game to get those guys out of their comfort zone on the defensive line and clean it up so we can get to the second level.
And Isaac Smith is going to have a ton of tackles. He's going to pop. You're going to hear his name a lot, like get used to it. But that's partially because we're going to be getting to that second level. And then we've had this little back and forth on the backs and who's going to get more carries and are we going to use Star a little bit more. All it takes is those few where you break a tackle or Lewis looking a little more confident or that one broken tackle from Bishop. And, I wouldn't be surprised if we have multiple explosive runs. And that's what you need. That's what you need against a scheme like this. What are you seeing on the back end from their defense? I think you're right in noting that Smith overall is the star of the defense, and I don't mean position-wise, but he's the star player on the defense. He's the impact player from old NCAA games. But what are you seeing on the back end, and how do you feel about Joey's possibility to sit back there calmly and have success?
Yeah, they technically play like 4 safeties as starters when you actually look at how their depth chart roster is listed out. Smith is their best defensive player. He had 127 tackles last year. They call in their... He's a star. He's 6 feet, like 220, 6'1", 220. But they call him a Sam. I don't know. Whatever. He's listed as a safety on their roster. Anyway, he's a great player. Great player. Big, physical, can cover tight ends, backs, sideline to sideline. 127 tackles for a guy at 220 is just incredibly impressive. Their green dots, Nick Mitchell, good players. The other guy is going to go sideline to sideline. He's a 2-year starter. Jalen Smith, former Vol, is going to play some. You should get him. He's kind of more their first down backer, their run backer. They like to use Smith as their second backer in passing downs. Smith also does have a pick this year. I forgot to mention there. So their job is to clean up after the gaps have been solidified by their defensive line, muddy up the middle on crossers, tight end passes, check downs to backs. Where they're absolutely weak on is outside linebackers. So they got 2 guys, Zachariah Tillman and Brandon Jennings, are their starters. Neither of those guys have a sack, and they try and use those guys as blitzers. They really try and blitz all of them, but those are kind of like their jack guys. And they just have not been successful. They got a good amount of tackles, but it's just not something that they've been able to do. So for me, it's going to be, you got to secure the ball. They're going to try, and I would imagine in this game as the underdog, they're going to try and force the ball out, get turnovers. And the other thing is with Smith, especially if you're going to throw it over the middle, locate him, know where he's going to be. He's not going to be the Mike, but you still got to keep an eye out on him. And then I'll get to their safeties in a second, but with their linebackers, do you think Kitzelman is going to have a big game? Is this kind of something maybe where he's more used as a blocker, or do you think they might actually try some stuff over the middle with him?
I was, as you were describing kind of the way they're going to try and get at the scheme, I started to think about Kitts. And I mean, I love him so much as a tight end, but this is purely like a gut feel. I just have a feeling he's going to be involved in fitting guys up in the run game a lot. I think that they've had a lot of faith in Joey to work through progressions and get in I mean, we haven't seen this a ton in the past couple of years with Heupel, get in an actual, like, it's me and you, Brazel, or it's me and you, Staley, like an actual rhythm like that of like, we're just playing man on man. Like we're playing 2-on-2 basically. I think they're going to trust Joey to do that. They're going to trust him working through progressions to do that. They're going to trust that our guys are going to find space, because I do think we're actually going to be able to protect the quarterback and give him some clean pockets. I really like what I'm seeing out of Brazel, Staley, and Matthews right now. And so I think I wouldn't be surprised if he leaks out for a touchdown. I'm not saying that, but I think Kitts is going to be putting in work in the run game, and maybe just enough to scheme up a 27-yard pass down the seam. But I think he's more likely to do that than he is to be a focal point. I think we're going to be relying on the wide receivers.
It's going to be interesting because corner is a weak spot for them. They have a guy who's 6'4" at corner, Kelly Jones. I would imagine he's probably going to play Brazel, just thinking of the matchup. But I think they're going to be shadowing Brazel. That they have good corners, their weak spot. They have Diego Brumfield. He started at Memphis. He battled injuries last year. He's helped solidify their second corner spot. So they're not as bad as they were last year. Last year, they were a disaster at corner, which makes it even more frustrating how he couldn't throw the ball. I know Nico only played the first half, but I remember just like reading, like, this is one of the worst pass defense the SEC has ever seen, and we couldn't do anything with it. But
anything.
That's fine. Anything. Mississippi State rotates 3 safeties. Hunter Washington's their best guy. He's not afraid to be physical. He can man up against guys. He'll come down in the slot. They rotate these 3. Jerron Manning's like their deep protector. Braylon Lanier, who was recruited by Nick Saban to play corner at Bama, ended up going to a couple different schools, kind of found a home in Starkfield. He was like their best guy. They've moved him to safety and slot after he struggled at corner last year. It was like one of those situations where it wasn't his fault that his numbers looked bad, which can happen at corner. Just, when you're asked to play the best guy in one-on-one situations like that, that can be really tough. But they're going to move guys around. But I think outside they can be attacked. And I think this might be the Mike Matthews breakout game. As kind of as I was looking at it, I think he could have a massive game, either him or Staley, and they're interchangeable slot and Z receiver. But I'm really interested to see if Matthews kind of has maybe an 8-catch game today or on Saturday.
Brazel's at the point where, like, he demands attention, both because he's been so productive and he's so physically imposing. Like, when he's right, he's so physically imposing, and he seems really locked in with Joey right now. Give him the attention, because Staley is so precise and Matthews is so explosive that I think they can find grass. And this is all to say, I think they actually can have success there, because, again, I don't know that the pass rush is going to be too crazy. And I think that might even be secondary to the run game success we could have. And so are you thinking about their scheme, and you could talk about the 3-3-5 a little bit if you want, but thinking about their scheme, is it something where you feel like Kitts could get into a rhythm, or Davis could get a couple of passes, or are you still thinking it's like wide receiver and it kind of depends on the openings?
I think it's going to depend on just what they give you, because Mississippi State, the one thing that I noticed watching Arizona State, they love to just drop back and be careful. They do not want to get beat deep. They'll sometimes rush 3 and drop 8. They're going to rely on their defensive linemen, like I mentioned, to hold their gaps and let the linebackers clean up. Their job is to be very physical, to sound gap discipline. They have a fast back 7. They're going to go sideline to sideline. And I think they're just going to play soft coverage everywhere. I think you're going to see a lot of cover 3, cover 4 quarters in this game. Miss State last year, Mississippi State got gashed. We gashed them in the run game. Sampson it felt like 73 carries. I think it was 33. but they did not allow explosive plays outside of a couple Samson runs. So I think that's what their game plan is going to be. Bend but don't break, and then see if you can force a couple turnovers. Baby Joey, he hasn't missed yet, but, misses on some deep shots. Kitzelman might be, something that they focus on, be physical with him over the middle of the field on some of those crossers that he's been getting wide open on. So I don't think they have the coverage, guys, if they try and man us up. I think that would be a grave mistake by them. And I think their goal is to get in 3rd and 6 and force Aguilar to get the second reads and pick them apart in zone.
So the two things that makes me think of, one, we are going to have that moment that we talked about last week where Heupel needs to go for it on a 4th down. We need to be in 3rd and 6, and he needs to be in 2-down territory. And
I watched as a Lions fan, I watched Dan Campbell on Monday, so you're kind of triggering me right now.
Yeah, it's like, let's go.
Yes.
And then the other thing, and it harkens back to the Syracuse game and the success we had, Heupel on those first plays of drives or that second play of a drive off of a good successful run, if they're going to sit back in the zone, but Heupel feels like he can sniff out whether that's going to be cover 3 or cover 2 or shading towards Brazel in some kind of bracket, we're just going to throw a deep post. Like, he's just going to see if they can pass things off correctly, and Joey is going to throw it to Matthews, and hopefully he takes advantage of a clean pocket and throws it where it needs to go. I think you're going to see that relatively early on because he wants a shot play.
I would also say because Lebby plays so quick, although they've slowed it down this year, I would imagine our tempo won't be as effective in terms of tiring out a defense as it is on some other teams. So I wonder if Heupel maybe is more concerned, kind of like we saw in the second half of Georgia, where he slowed it down a little bit to get the right play in more than just run quick and hope it works.
Talk a little bit more about Lebby and maybe his history a little bit, but more so like what he's going to try to do to us. It's what he does to other teams too, but what he's going to try to do to us offensively.
He was one of Heupel's first hires at UCF. He worked with him in 18 and 19. Had a little step back. He unfortunately was associated with Briles, and there was a lot of collateral damage there with Art Briles. So he kind of lost his way, but got back and really did a great job with Oklahoma in 22. Took with Dylan Gabriel, got Venables kind of out of hot water, and then Oklahoma's offense went right back in the toilet after he left for the 1 year. It's similar to Heupel. Very quick tempo, only 65 plays per game so far, which I think is quality of opponent so far. Last year, that was higher. So I wouldn't be surprised they uptick that. They're going to rely on the run game. They're going to gap and zone you. It's about a 50-50 split. They're not, based off what I see, their wide splits aren't as important as it has been in like Tennessee's. I think that's his one adjustment. And they throw the deep ball a little bit, but not as aggressive. That's probably a talent thing more than anything. Also, last year, poor Michael Van Buren was getting beat up as a freshman. I think that played a part into it. They are fantastic in the red zone. Lebby can scheme it up in the red zone. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was part of his job with Heupel in 18 and 19 when he was an assistant. So he was very important in the red zone. They're going to run power. They're going to run pin and pull. They'll run counter. They're going to run the option. They're going to run RPOs. They're going to be creative in the run game. You got to play your gaps perfectly. You cannot fall for the eye candy. And I would expect a lot of play action, even if it's token, the classic Joey play actions, but he just puts the ball in for half a second, pulls it back out. They are 4th in rushing success rate in the country. Now, I get it. Alcorn, Southern Miss, Northern Illinois. I understand that. Arizona State was a playoff team last year.
Yeah.
So
tough team.
Even with they are a tough team. That's still impressive. I mentioned they only have 2 guys that have more than 6 catches. So if you take away Evans and Thompson, can Lebby scheme up to get other guys open? That's going to be interesting. And they're only 101st in throws per game. So even though we're in game 5, if you shut down their run game and you take an early lead, is Lebby going to go more to to the pass game and try and catch up. Because I think that's kind of how I would look at it if I was Tennessee. You know how I mentioned, again, Georgia, I would take the ball first. I would
was
not
thinking
be
the
shocked
same
if
thing.
it's Heupel just like, I'm taking the ball first, and we're going to go up 7-0. I'm going to see if Jeff might, I don't want to say panic, but Jeff might get away from what his original script was. So it's going to look similar. You're going to see some formations that are like, oh, that looks like 2022 Tennessee. You're going to see some wide stacks, stuff like that. You're going to see tight end motion running in to pin a defensive tackle. It'll look similar, but Lebby's got his own spin on it as well.
It's going to be a little taste of our own medicine kind of game. Like the things that we really like to do to make defenses feel vulnerable, and suddenly there's space everywhere that you didn't expect to see space. I think we're going to see some of that. I also think it could be a game, especially in the red zone, especially because their quarterback can run it a little bit, not crazy, but a little bit, where I hope Jeremiah Thielander has a nice pair of skates, because sometimes he can get put on skates in a game like this. And, you know, like you said, the difference is like outside for them is a 5'9" guy who relies on route running, not a Chris Brazzell who's going to go win the ball. But when you have a little wide receiver screen that leaks back to the middle, and Jeremiah Thielander has the oh crap moment on tape, suddenly that's 23 yards. And I don't mean to pick on him, but Jeff Lebby's going to pick on him. And so like the way they're going to use their receivers is not go win jump balls against Colton Hood. It's going to be go find space. And he's pretty darn good at that, and he's good at that in the red zone. And so they're going to pick up on some vulnerabilities, I think.
Banks rarely does this. Banks almost always sends 4, so I'm not too concerned. But if you try dropping 8 on like 2nd and 11, Lebby's cool with it. He's like, cool, I'll take the 6-yard run and I'll go 3rd and 5. So Arizona State tried to do some of that and it did not work. So if you try, like we've seen with the wide choice offense, where it's like, we'll just drop 8 and we'll make you figure it out. You do that, Lebby's like, cool, we'll just use our run game, especially in this game with both their backs. So I would, like I said, Banks doesn't normally ever do that, so I'm not like overly concerned, but I think you're going to have to blitz some. I think I would not be as aggressive as I was against Georgia. I don't think that's necessary. And I'll say this, Lebby will pick on Redmond if Redmond doesn't come to play. Now, I believe in Ty Redmond. I think he's going to be really good. I think that the Georgia game is going to be a launching point for him. But you might have to shade a little safety help to him, especially if turn time plays like you did against Georgia. Just bracket Evans. That's fine. That's you can't screw that up most of the time. So I would say Lebby will find something in our defense and attack it over and over again until you adjust. So Banks has to be willing to make adjustments throughout the game. This is not going to be like it was against Georgia.
We have to fit up on the run game. Have to, or it is going to be a long day at the office. And we absolutely have to find a way to move Shapen off his spot. Doesn't have to be every play. Yeah. It doesn't have to be that we're living in the backfield, but maybe we can move the pocket towards him with our defensive tackles, or maybe we could find a way to just make him get off of his spot, make him be rolling out and not a designed rollout.
He's not a gunner athlete. He's not Gunnar Stockton like athlete. So if he makes some throws like Gunnar did, then I just might quit watching college football this year. But Shapen is a good quarterback, but you're right. You got to make him move off the spot. You're going to have to hit him. You're going to have to get in some passing lanes on him because he's crafty. He's crafty. He will find the right guy if you give him enough time. So you're going to have to move him and make him work.
The biggest factor besides whether we can hold up against their run game with some of the front seven play that we've seen and some of the people we're missing there, to me is going on the road. And it's something that we put as a key before the season. We talked about it in a couple of different ways. We don't want to see our team look so goofy on the road sometimes. We don't want to see this silly procedural stuff. We don't want to see, honestly, moments, especially last year, that just looked like we had a completely different approach on the road. And I think we're realizing that some of that was like a lack of trust and shelling up a little bit from that perspective. But This game was a little bit closer than people expected it to be in Neyland last year, and Dylan Sampson just decided to be Dylan Sampson, and thank goodness for it. But this is the game that kind of had him run ragged. And so now we're going down to Starkville, and that place can get rowdy. Maybe it's not top 3. It might not be Penn State wideout, but it's going to be rowdy on Saturday. And we have some concerns, and maybe it's just like bad memories, but some concerns about Heupel on the road. I think there's a little more nuance to that. And so what are your thoughts with Heupel on the road and the big picture, and then specifically for Saturday?
Yeah, Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel wrote a good article.
Really thoughtful write-up.
Yes, really thoughtful yesterday or today about the road woes. And there were some interesting stats that I took from it. Tennessee's third in AP top 25 road wins in the SEC since 2021. They are 6th in win percentage on the road since Heupel took over, which Tennessee's been, if you don't count Oklahoma, Texas, probably like the number 4 program, wherever, tied with Ole Miss after Georgia and Alabama. But so 6 isn't bad, maybe like that a little higher, but you got to remember where he came from. Like 21, they were able to beat Missouri on the road and kick their ass. Same with Kentucky. And everyone thought that might be a winless team going into the year. So you got to have some perspective on that. Since 2021, SEC teams win on the road 41% of the time. Heupel is at 44%. And we're also not counting Pittsburgh in 2022, whose FBS program had success. They were not as good as they were in 21. That was after Kenny Pickett, but that was still a nice win, getting a nice true road win. Out of Heupel's 10 road losses, 7 of them have been against teams that won 10 games.
Big boys. Okay, a lot of Georgia, Alabama in there. 5 of them were against playoff teams. Tennessee's been favored in only 3 of those losses. I get the Arkansas and South Carolina games sucked, and Florida in 23. They sucked. Brutal losses for different reasons. No doubt about it. But I think a significant amount of that was the quarterback play, because it wasn't an issue. Even when we lost South Carolina 22, it wasn't offense. It was defense and maybe something else. So you look at those facts there, right? And maybe if you want to even throw in a little like, hey, we're just cursed against Florida, those games shouldn't count as well. You could throw that in there. But I get it. Like, I think Arkansas really, it's a point, but then it got overblown to the point because then they lost to Georgia, where it's like, we can't win in the road. It's just not true. Like, I remember LSU. I remember those Missouri, Kentucky games. I remember how well we played against Bama in 21 with a team that had no business playing as well as they did. It's those procedural penalties are annoying. I get it. But I don't think it's a specific Heupel issue where it's going to affect him the rest of his career. I think there's because of how we're reared as fans. It's not to say I'm not worried about it. I'm worried about it. But because of how we're reared as fans, it's like we're never going to remember the good ones. We're never going to remember the clean ones.
Right.
Or it's like when you do really well on the road, it's like, well, we were supposed to beat that team. Look how good we played. But the ones that have gone kind of meh have been really wonky, like really weird in a couple of different ways, not always the typical ways. But even like Oklahoma last year, it was like we clammed up. It was so weird. It was such a strange vibe. And at the time, we didn't realize that there may have been so many limitations from the quarterback position. We're going to learn a lot about Joey. He took on Georgia and just stared him down and played beautifully. The road in the SEC is a different thing. Like, it is just one of those things that goes weird sometimes. And you can kind of get carried away with it sometimes in negative ways. And this is not a direct comparison, but I talked about like how Auburn, Oklahoma was on my radar as a matchup. And it wasn't on my radar because I thought they were like equally talented teams or Auburn was a guaranteed victory. It was on my radar because it's like you have Jackson Arnold, and in games like this in the SEC, we've just seen it too much. Suddenly it's going to be close and he's going to be a part of it. This is all black magic type conversations. This isn't analysis, and I'm completely okay with that. When you have this time slot and you have a road game in Starkville and the way that crowd can build, and suddenly everyone's eyes are turned towards the 2 primetime games on Saturday, and then suddenly you're down by 5 towards the end of the third quarter, and you can't stop that 3rd and 2, that's where it becomes a different thing, and suddenly the spotlight's on Joey. And there's no reason to believe we won't score. And so I'm not saying like, oh, throw in the towel. But it's just one of those spooky ones, in my opinion.
I would say, too, the fact we haven't played on the road, we're going into game number 5, is weird, even though Florida always won. When you got it out of the way early, then you got the kids, got the environment. They understand what it's like. They go, oh, hey, I can't hear. I really have to make sure I get the right hand signal, or I got to figure out, okay, what's my linebacker saying to me? I've got to pay attention to everything that goes on. I think that was maybe part of it. Now the Florida thing, we play them in November. We're not having that. I also would say that when you have a quarterback you don't fully believe in as a coach, the entire team knows it. The entire team. You
especially
cannot
with a
hide
scheme
it.
like this.
Especially in a scheme like this. It simply cannot be hidden. There's no way to do it. And it was pretty obvious last year. Maybe not so obvious in 23. I think they went into the season both times being like, we trust him, and then it turned out we don't trust him. And I would say there is a fair criticism of Heupel. He seems to really be conservative in these type of situations. And my biggest concern after watching the Georgia game was this is not a quarterback issue. This is a Heupel issue. If it's close and he's punting on like 4th and 2 from his 41, I'm going to be freaking out. Like I will. So I think it's imperative they get a good start, because that's the other criticism. They just do not get good starts in these games. Other than Missouri in 21, it just feels like they've never gotten a good road. And LSU in 22. Feels like they never got a good road start. So they've got to come out quick. They got to score on that first drive. That scripted drive needs to be perfect. They need to get 7 and put the pressure on Mississippi State, because that place is going to be – look, I get it. It's a Mississippi State Starkville. That place is going to be jumping with those stupid cowbells that should be illegal, that are technically illegal, whatever. It's going to be jumping. They are flying high. They're 4-0. They've been through a lot as a program. If you thought Tennessee's been through a lot, you go check out Mississippi State the last 7 years. That has been a really rough situation. So I think they're going to be – I have faith in this team even after losing to Georgia, that this can be different because of how well they handled adversity in the Georgia game. But I swear, if I see a 4th and 2 punt on our side or on the Mississippi State side, Daniel, you're going to get a lot of angry texts from me. You might get a phone call. We don't talk on the phone. You might get a phone call from me.
Like a little quick therapy session might have to happen, because I'm feeling nervous. I think we should go ahead and do our score predictions. I have one more thought, but I want to get our score predictions out there first, because it relates to kind of how we're both feeling about the game. And I don't know your prediction yet. And so I'll let you go first, and then I'll share mine.
Give me – I think we're going to move the ball, but I think Mississippi State's going to be able to prevent us from scoring touchdowns. I think Heupel's just going to take points. Give me 37-28.
Okay.
Which might – I don't love that, but that's – I like to do like margin more.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 8 to 10.
I have it as 42-31.
Mm-hmm.
And I think weirdly, that's a decent amount of faith in our defense there for them not to continue to score.
I'm going to tell you right now, if they give up 31 in Mississippi State, I would not listen to the Sports Animal on Monday morning.
Well, I think they might. I don't know.
I'm just letting you know.
My other thought, the one thought that I had as I was kind of thinking about the score prediction, because I wasn't sitting there at like 51-20. I would love that, but I wasn't there.
It's not happening.
But yeah, it's not happening. It'd be lovely, but it's not happening. The But the one thought I did have, and this is just where my psyche is, I do think, and talk about, painting a different picture, what a magical world we live in. But I do think we are Arizona State making a stop on a ridiculous play and a Max Gilbert kick going in away from it being like a 13.5-point line, and we think we're going to cover. As in, and again, like those are two very different things. Like it's a different world. And so I'm not saying, oh, we should have beat them. No, I'm not playing that game. But it would have a very different feel to it. And I think it would allow us a little bit more to just get at like, okay, how do we feel about these teams? Not me admittedly feeling kind of spooked by this game. I would be more surprised if it's 51-20 than I would be if it was 35-32.
Absolutely. If it's like somewhere 10-20, it wouldn't shock me. I would be more shocked if it's more than 20 than less than 10. I think this is absolutely a bold team. Mississippi State is. I think Lebby's a very solid coach. He's gonna scheme some stuff up. I think their defense is vastly improved. I don't know if that means they were so bad last year. I don't know if that means they're an average SEC defense per se. But when you factor in it's on the road, and thank God it's at 4:15. Like if it was a 7:30, 8 o'clock game, I'd be even more nervous.
Yep.
And maybe this is stupid, but I feel like if that Arkansas game was a noon game, we're having a different discussion from last year. But Tennessee, I want you to start out fast. Please start out fast. If you can just get up 14-3, even if they make adjustments and stuff, that's fine. I just do not want it to be 3 points with 6 minutes or 10 points because we scored on the first drive and the script's gone and now we look terrible and we have 10 points at halftime. That would really irk me.
I'd be really impressed if we got – I'd love to see us get like all three backs over 80 yards. Or somebody pops to 120 and then you got the other two over 80. Like, give me Starr actually having a game that we know he can have, and then Bishop at 82 yards and Lewis at 79 yards. Like, I think that is in play because I think those backs are chomping at the bit. But they got to do it. They got to go do it. And so we're in a similar range, but definitely not in the – we're going to go down there and just, take care of business kind of move.
We talked about it pre-show. That line just moving and moving down and down. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think it did that against Arkansas last year. It's got me freaked out a little bit.
Yep. It's one of those, I think it totally depends on your psyche as a Vols fan. You're either in like Vols by Fitty or completely spooked mode.
Yeah,
I'm feeling spooked. I've seen enough of these that I'm gonna be curled up just for a second, and hopefully they let me come out of the fetal position pretty quickly. The other thing that we have on our radar, and it was the big news drop of the week, and it's funny how everybody's chomping at the bit to leak this stuff so much that I actually forgot what day it was actually supposed to formally drop. And then the leaks were so accurate that everyone just kind of went with them. But we know Tennessee's future opponents. We know that the three consistent opponents, and then we know what some of the rotations are going to look like. We have Alabama, we have Kentucky, we have Vandy. We have played peak Florida, peak Alabama, peak Georgia in every form and fashion you can possibly think of for the past X number of years. I don't want to hear it from fans of other teams. I don't want to hear it. And then the two that y'all are labeling as easy are 2 of 9 games. And so they're for everybody, not just for Tennessee, for everybody. These schedules are going to get filled in with really challenging games. And so it's actually a result that we thought would probably happen, but we didn't know if Florida would sneak in there. There was a lot of whining from Tennessee fans about how meaningful the Florida game is to them and how could that possibly go away and all this different stuff. To me, that shows a misunderstanding of some of the traditional rivalries from those other teams' perspectives, especially Kentucky and Vandy. And frankly, I'm not going to miss playing Florida. And it's fine that I'm not going to miss them because we're still going to play them.
I think I checked, if I'm not mistaken, like the previous 25 years before divisions, we played them 4 times or something like that. So I get it. Here's my thing. First off, you're going to play them every 2 years. So
We
that's
play
fine.
them in 2027.
The second
Like,
thing,
it's not like.
Yeah, exactly. The second thing is Alabama, Vandy, and Kentucky, we've played over 100 times.
Yes.
All of those, other than World War II, have not been interrupted, even during COVID. So for me, we don't do tradition anymore in college football. Okay. I don't mind that the team we played 50 times, we're not playing over the team we played 110 times. Okay. And I get it. And the other thing, Vanderbilt had a winning record against us for an 8-year stretch. So, and they're ranked. Go look at some of these SEC power polls, baby. Go look at them. They think Vandy's better than us on some of these. So I really don't want to hear the complaining about it. Like we said, if it was going to be Florida or Kentucky, that's fine. I'd be more upset if I was Ole Miss and Oklahoma. Lane Kiffin was like, "What in the hell is going on?"
Come on, man.
Or Florida lost LSU, Tennessee. That would make me mad too. I think Florida lost another one too that they played a lot. Auburn, I think it was. So I think this is perfectly fine. And for the people complaining, we have to go on the road in 2027. Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Missouri, Oklahoma. Those are possibly 4 of the top 12 teams in the country in 2027.
And I mean, even next year, it's we're welcoming Alabama, LSU, and Texas.
Yes.
This is just what it is in the SEC. And then we go to Williams-Brice and to Kyle Field. It's just, and I'm not even saying that ours somehow wound up being harder than anyone else's. This is just what it is in the SEC. But I don't know, if those were the 3, it was bound to be a little bit of critical of Tennessee because of who we ended up with. But it seems like a couple teams were kind of weirdly unhappy. I was talking to a buddy of mine who's an Oklahoma fan, and he was talking about how he understands why they landed the opponents they did, but that it does the consistent games that they have besides Texas just go completely away from their actual recruiting base. And so it's they're basically, okay, so you're going to send us up for this marquee game completely away from where we actually pull most of our talent from, and we have to make up ground on that front. And so everybody was a little bit this is just going to feel weird, sort of.
I had 2 things that irked me with the schedule. One is I wish they'd split up Georgia, Florida.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of annoying. Why are we playing Texas and Texas A&M the same year and Florida and Georgia? And I get it. I'm sure there was a computer that ran 1,000 simulations to try and get this right. It would have been nice if you could have had Texas A&M in 27 and then Florida next year or something like that. It would have just been, I would have liked playing one of them every year. The other thing is I thought it was dumb we got to play Arkansas again. No offense to them.
It was just weird.
I thought that was, I was like, why aren't we playing Missouri or Ole Miss? We haven't played them in a couple of years, but that's whatever. And I said Florida got screwed. LSU actually did because they lost the Alabama rivalry and the Florida rivalry. And I think they lost one of the Mississippi rivalries because I think they played both schools every year. So they kind of got screwed when you think about the meanings, the rivalry. I mean, Bama and Florida were their 2 biggest rivals. And I know SEC is trying to make LSU, Texas A&M a thing. They've tried and tried and tried. I get it, but they got it worse than a lot of other schools. And the last thing I would say, this is my hot take. I think that 22 Georgia team is going to be the last undefeated SEC team we ever see.
Yeah, I mean, when I read that, I was thinking about that note that you made, and I'm having these little dreaming on scenarios of well, their team's talented enough right now that I feel like they could go undefeated on one of these slates. But it's could. I don't know if they're gonna. Of course could. There will be rosters talented enough that they could be favored in every one of these games. But just
not with the transfer portal.
It's just teams are going to load up and teams are going to fill their weakness and teams are going to go after your weakness. And then the other thing that I'm interested in, I guess 2 things, one tongue-in-cheek and one not. When Pavia comes or when we go to Vanderbilt in 2028 when Pavi is a 14th year senior. I mean, to talk about taking his crack at us, that's going to be really impressive if he really thinks he has a chance in that game. And then the other thing, the one thing I hope doesn't start to happen, and I think it's going to be interesting to track, and we can kind of keep it on our radar. Obviously, the funny little split is like the home road, like alternate, like you have one more depending on the year.
Right.
I hope that we don't see a pattern of like the two participants in the SEC title game or the one who wins just being the one who got more home games that year. Like these rosters are all going to be so talented that I hope we don't start to fall into a pattern of just like, yeah, you just got more home games and you had a little bit better setup, and the two teams that were talented enough and got the right amount of home games are playing in Atlanta every year. I hope we don't see that.
It seems like that might not be too much of an issue, because if you listen to Danny White and a couple of other ADs over the last couple of months, it looks like these neutral site games are going to start to die off because of how the schedule is. Because if you're Tennessee and you've got to play that road schedule in 27, and then you're like, hey, can you go play, I'm making this up, NC State and Charlotte, which is technically a road game.
Yeah.
It's a neutral site game, but technically, like, you kind of, it's a road game. That's asking a lot of a head coach. Like, Heupel's not going to like that. And I think we do play West Virginia in 27 in Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
So, which is a neutral site game, but that's a game that you lose some. I mean, yeah, they'll have the two home games, but now you have 6 home games instead of 7, which has been the standard for SEC teams, or just, when they don't have neutral site games. And, you're putting yourself at risk playing a P4 opponent and not having the opportunity to get a home game out of it, and maybe neutral site game, tickets get more expensive and everything. So yeah, I think we're going to see as we go into the 2030s that disappear to help balance that out. But that's a really good point about the 5-4 thing. And funny enough, I think the ACC TV schedule expires in 2031 and they went through 2029. So just keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Virginia, North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not the last, silly movement that we're going to have on this front. The last thing I'll say on it, and this may already be written down somewhere, I just didn't feel like reading every single, additional bylaw related to this. They better protect the third Saturday in October. Like that still needs to happen at that time every year. And I think they probably have that in mind. That's on the radar 6 different places. I'm not saying that I have any indication otherwise, but that still needs to happen at the same time. And so some of the other traditional ones need to happen around the same time too. The last thing, and we have a big NCAA landscape ahead of us, and at some point, and maybe we tackle it during the bye, I want to talk about the rest of our schedule and what we feel like we've learned about these upcoming opponents. But maybe let's get through this first road tilt first. But the other thing on the radar from a college football perspective this week is in that primetime slot, hopefully coming off of a Tennessee win in that 4:00 slot, you have Alabama at Georgia and you have Oregon at Penn State. Do you have a lean in either one of these games? You may not, and that's okay. We'll just talk about them. But do you have a lean? Do you have an intuition, or do you have are you throwing your hands up and excited to watch?
I would say Georgia, I feel, is going to beat Alabama. And if not, then I will become depressed for 2 reasons. One, it means, how did we screw up the Georgia game? And then 2, it's like, oh, Alabama's better. That Florida State thing was just a one-off or whatever. So that I'm not rooting for Georgia, but I would not be happy if Georgia lost by 10. So I will say that. Oregon, Penn State, I got no clue, because James Franklin plays that terrible schedule. So I have no clue if his team's actually any good. Oregon hasn't played anyone either, so I don't know if they're any good. Oregon is good. Let me clarify. Oregon's good. Landings are in that respect. But my instincts always go against James Franklin.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's one of those. Penn State got their whiteout and they got their primetime game, and there are a couple coaches I would pick over him, but there's not a super long list I would pick above Dan Lanning to go in there and just really laugh that off and kick their ass.
Right.
his teams often have that kind of mindset of like, oh, a wideout, that's adorable, and then they just thrash you. And they can disappoint too, but that's kind of two heavyweights that early when we were previewing the season, we said, talent and schedule is going to get them really close to the playoff, and so they're going to slug it out in the meantime. Alabama, Georgia, for me, I'm really interested to see how Alabama's offense and specifically their quarterback look. Hostile environment. It's Kirby Smart. We talked about this a ton in recent weeks. I'm interested to see if he looks sharp, and I think people were back on whatever bandwagon existed for him after the Wisconsin game, but Wisconsin sucks. And so it's going to be really interesting to see if he can find a rhythm or if he's kind of like seeing ghosts like some quarterbacks do against Georgia. Yeah, it's one of those. It's really what it is a big fun slate that hopefully is like the proverbial cigarette after we go and take care of Mississippi State. I'm excited for the whole slate, and I'm nervous about our game.
Quick question: which era of Tennessee coach did you enjoy more, Mike Gundy or Bruce Pearl?
Gosh, I mean, I think my answer is John Gruden.
I actually, it was so funny that they're like, "Hey, Mike, can you coach the rest of the year just as a help?" And he's like, "No, I'm going fishing."
I don't blame him, honestly.
It's funny because they're not really that similar, but like how they exited Bruce.
Are you about to
Gundy,
say, oh, Bruce
and Gundy literally epitomizes the people they are. That's all I'm going to say. It just was interesting that
it fits the prototype.
Their exits are perfectly encapsulate them as people in general.
Gundy's reminded me a little bit of Orgeron's, where he was like he probably like put up a fight, but Orgeron has that famous interview line where he's like, they called me into the office and told me how much they were going to pay me to clean out my office. And I said, how fast can I clean out my office? Basically, I'm not going to do the Edo impression, but I'm so tempted to. So yeah, we've got a big slate ahead of us. We've got our predictions in, and I know we're feeling a little bit squirmish, but I also have a lot of faith in this team, and we've got some playmakers that are going to go put up points. I think it's just a matter of playing to the potential that we know is there.
My final point on the game, I think we're going to learn. After Georgia, I felt pretty confident. I was like, oh, this is a playoff team. I think this game will actually tell us more if this is a playoff game. It's easy to get up for Georgia when ABC and Herbstreit and game days in town. Like, that's easy. Neyland's 103 rocking. It's hard. Starkville at 4:30 in the afternoon on SEC Network, and you just played UAB. And your bye weeks next week. Those are the hard ones. So if they come out, handle business, take care of it, even if it's a game in the first half, and they come out and say, hey, we're going to win by 2 scores, double-digit points, I think then we can confidently say this looks like a playoff team.
Yeah, this is one where I don't care if it's not primetime. You got to match their energy.
Yep.
Because if you don't, you're going to get hit in the mouth. Yeah, I'm excited for it. We'll have a review of it next week, and we'll be at a little bit of a point to take a breath. We're going to look at the scores overall and compare how we've been on those offense and defense for the season. We're going to look at the rest of the slate, and of course, we're going to get into the film and grind some tape and see what happens down in Starkville this weekend.
I think we're going to learn Joey Aguilar's the real deal. I think we're going to learn that Tim Banks' demise has been greatly exaggerated, and I don't think it's going to be beautiful. I think some fans are going to complain because it's Mississippi State and they just see the maroon and white. But I think overall we're going to be happy with what we see on Saturday.
I'm excited. Send them out, Zach.
Guys, I looked at my phone and I saw Rick Barnes in the gym, and I said, oh, hey, Tennessee basketball starting fall practice. Okay, here we go. So I don't know if we're going to do it during the bye week yet. We are going to do a season preview.
Yep, I'm excited about the team. I'm very excited about the team.
If you believe Barnes, it might be his best one yet at Tennessee, and that only means good things. And you might have to spray me down talking about Nate Emmett for 10 minutes. So that might be something also, some Tobias Harrison comparisons that I'm really excited about. But we're going to do that It's gonna be on YouTube. We've got the podcast. Please subscribe if you don't. Even if you don't listen, like, we just appreciate the download. It's good for our numbers. We're trying to want to get to 500 before the end of the year. 500 total downloads, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 50 people usually per episode. So that's kind of what we're hoping for. And spread the word. Just say, hey, this is a cool podcast. You guys should listen to it. And we're not super long-winded like some other places. So
I will be in Neyland at some point this season. I don't know the exact game yet, but I'll let everyone know when I know. At that point, it's one of those where I would love to spread the word in person. Mm-hmm. And so if I happen to run into you and talk your ear off about the podcast, that's awesome. And so I hope we get to celebrate a little bit of it together. Hope we're here celebrating next week, and we'll talk about the game, we'll talk about the future slate, and we'll talk about the rest of the NCAA slate that gets thrown at us on Saturday in a really fun way.
Thanks, guys, and go Vols.